Ah, my children, gather around. Tonight, I will tell you the story of how Tortoise, yes, our clever but greedy friend, got his bumpy cracked shell. You see this story? It is a warning for those who think they are too smart for their own good. It all started on a day that changed everything. That day, Tortoise was falling from the sky. Yes, falling, spinning, screaming, with no way to save himself. But how did he get up there in the first place? Let me tell you. A long time ago, Tortoise had a smooth, shiny shell. Oh, it was beautiful. It gleamed in the sun, and he loved showing it off. But Tortoise had a problem. He was not only clever, but also very greedy. Whenever he saw food, he would scheme and trick to make sure he got the biggest share. One day, the birds of the forest decided to hold a great feast in the sky. They had worked hard collecting delicious fruits, nuts, and roasted yams. The feast would be held on a floating island in the clouds, a place where only those who could fly could reach. When Tortoise heard about the feast, his mouth watered. He thought, these birds want to leave me out? Me? Tortoise? Never. I must find a way to eat that food. Tortoise went to the birds and said, "My dear friends, I have heard of your great feast and I am so happy for you. But look at me. I cannot fly like you. Will you let me starve while you enjoy yourselves? Please, let me come with you. I have an idea to make your feast even better." The birds were curious. "What idea do you have, Tortoise?" one of them asked. "I will represent all of us at the feast," Tortoise said, smiling. "Let me choose a new name. For this special occasion, I will call myself All of You. That way, when the hosts ask who the food is for, they will say it is for all of you, and we will share everything." The birds, thinking Tortoise was being kind, agreed. They each plucked a feather and gave it to Tortoise, who used the feathers to create wings. Soon, he looked like one of them and was ready to fly. When they reached the floating island, the smell of the food made Tortoise's stomach rumble. The hosts welcomed them warmly, saying, "Welcome, dear guests. This feast is for all of you." Tortoise stood up proudly. "Thank you. Since I am called All of You, I will eat first." The birds were shocked, but couldn't argue. They had agreed to the name. Tortoise began eating, stuffing his mouth with fruits, nuts, and roasted yams. He ate and ate, leaving only crumbs for the birds. The birds whispered angrily among themselves, "This tortoise has tricked us again. He must pay for this." After the feast, it was time to fly back home. But the birds had other plans. One by one, they plucked their feathers from Tortoise's wings. "Tortoise," said one bird, "you wanted to act like all of us, so now you can find your own way down." Before Tortoise could protest, they flew away, leaving him stranded on the floating island. Tortoise looked down at the ground far below. His smooth, shiny shell felt heavy, and he knew he couldn't jump without shattering. "Please, help me!" Tortoise shouted. But the birds only laughed as they disappeared into the clouds. Tortoise thought hard. He spotted Parrot, the last bird flying away. "Parrot, my friend! Help me send a message to my wife," Tortoise called out. Parrot, curious, flew back. "What message?" "Tell her to spread soft things, leaves, clothes, anything, on the ground so I can land safely," Tortoise said. Parrot nodded and flew to Tortoise's wife. But as mischievous as Parrot was, he changed the message. He told her, "Your husband says you should spread the hardest things you can find, stones, rocks, and logs, on the ground." When Tortoise's wife heard this, she was confused. Why would he want hard things? She wondered. But she obeyed. Tortoise, thinking the ground was covered with soft leaves, jumped from the sky. "Ah!" he screamed as he fell. Tortoise landed on the rocks and logs his wife had spread. His smooth, shiny shell shattered into pieces. He cried out in pain, but he didn't die. Slowly, he picked up the broken pieces and glued them back together. From that day, Tortoise's shell was bumpy and cracked. The lesson Tortoise limped back to his home, hungry and ashamed. He learned that greed and trickery come at a price. And that, my children, is why Tortoise has a bumpy shell today. So, whenever you see someone being too greedy or clever for their own good, just remember Tortoise's fall. The storyteller leans back and laughs heartily. Ah, this life, ain't? Greed never ends well.